Kevin Collins here with another raw file of the week edit from the FroKnowsPhoto.com forums. This is week 22, so we're almost halfway through a year, and all I can say is I'm loving it. Thank you, Jared, for providing this to the forum members. This is great. Get the quickies out of the way. First, this isn't my picture. I didn't take this picture, can't take credit for this picture. I'm only going to be doing edits to this picture for the forums. As of this moment, I don't know who took the picture, but whoever they are, I hope that they continue to submit pictures and that they get chosen again. I did see Greg and Jared's final JPEGs of their results. Jared went with his black and white and Greg went with color. I haven't seen the video. I don't know what path each of them took to get to their final results. So while I did see some of their results, I don't think I'm going to be influenced by any of what they did to actually get there. Now, with that being said, I honestly think this time Greg went a little overboard on the saturation, and because I haven't seen the video, I'm not sure if that's what he meant to do or what. So that was just a little observation. Let's just put it that way. So let's get into this. This picture was taken with a Canon EOS 50D with the 24 to 70 f2.8 L lens, shot at 70 millimeters, 1/100th of a second at f5.6 at ISO 1000. And let me start out with a little photo critique. Not that I'm any kind of expert, but I do know what I like to see. I do know how I would have shot this or tried to have shot this, and that's what I'm going to relate here. First, I think it's overexposed. I think the ISO 1000 is just way high. I know from experience using the 70 to 200 f2.8 that really good images can be taken at much lower ISOs using the capabilities of that lens or of the f2.8 aperture. I know this was shot in the morning, but it doesn't look like it was shot in the wee hours of the morning to where the sun wasn't up. This really just looks like to me, just like an overcast day. I could be wrong, could be completely off the mark here, but that's what it looks like to me. While this area up here looks to be blown out, when I start to mess with exposure here in a minute, you'll see that there's information back there. So the sensor picked it up. It was just way high on the exposure scale. So you can't really tell any definition in here. Second of all, while I like the composition, and I'm not sure that the photographer could do anything about this, I probably would have looked for a place to get less stuff in the frame. Maybe a step up, maybe a step or two up and to the right, maybe, to kind of block out. It looks to me like these are rail cars sitting on another track. I probably would have tried to avoid them if possible. Now, maybe if you turned the way I'm describing, the only thing that you'd see is that cloud of steam and smoke from the engine. I don't know. But this picture's busy. I mean, it really is. There's a lot of junk laying here from just day-to-day operations of the train yard, and the photographer has no control over that. But overall, it's a nice picture from where it was taken. I'm just wondering if there would have been a better composition some or better pictures in some other place. So that all being said, let's get into it. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a copy. Make sure we're working in the copy, which we are. And as always, I'm going to turn my lens corrections on. Well, okay. Not much of a change there because that is it's a professional lens, and you know it was shot at the top at the upper end of its focal length, which really didn't have much distortion to take care of. I've personally not shot with one of those lenses, but like I said, shooting the 70 to 200, I know that there's not going to be much of a change in there. Very next thing I'm going to do is go for the exposure, and I'm probably going to drop it 1.5 to 1 3/4 of a stop, something like that. And if we go all the way down and completely blow the exposure in the opposite direction, you can see that there's information back here that the sensor took up, but you can also tell that because it was blown out, it has a hard time telling whether it's blue or whether it's gray or whether it's white. It's guessing. So I think the lower, if he or she would have lowered the ISO and opened up the aperture, they would have gotten a much more pleasant result. So we're going to go back to about 1.5 stops under. I mean, even let's go back here and look at something that I just noticed. Look at all this up here on these rail cars. Even though I'd cut them out, that's some detail there. So anyway, 1.5 under. Alright, so that's brought some definition here. It's toned down the blandy colors, or it's made the colors start to pop. Let's put it that way. It's put some definition between the shades of colors here, giving us some more definitions in this steam cloud back here. So we're going to start there. We're going to pump up the contrast, which is something that I do a little bit, but I certainly don't take it near as far as Jared does. I mean, he would immediately go ba-boom, 100% contrast, and to me that's a bit much. That's a bit much. I'm going to pull it down 75, 80 maybe, somewhere in that range. Give it some definition, give it some tone, but don't go overboard. Next, I'm going to pump up the blacks just ever so slightly. Another thing that I noticed zooming around here earlier, while these words here look like they're perfectly in focus, the train, I mean, it's close to being in focus, but it's not dead tack sharp. Maybe that's because the train's at an oblique angle to the photographer, and it's the focal plane is kind of shooting through it as opposed to being parallel with it. But maybe he just had the focus point over here instead of on the train, and the train, I think, is actually behind that building a little bit, so that's why the focus is in at least to my eye just a little off. So we're going to move on. We're going to pump up the clarity, which just adds a little more definition back in here. We're going to hit a little bit of vibrance just to bring out the trees in the background, just not ever so, not a ton, but some. Not going to touch the saturation, but I am going to come down here to well, let's zoom in right there and I'll show you. Now granted, we're at 3:1 zoom, and on a computer screen 3:1, you're going to see all kinds of pixelations, and the majority of what you're seeing there is pixelation. But there's in my mind a flaw in the Canon sensors, or at least this model of the Canon sensors, that just no a smooth color, it just doesn't seem smooth. It always has some kind of pixelation to it, some kind of, this pixel is red and the pixel right next to it is pink, and while it kind of works, it just stands out in my mind, to my eye, that's wrong. I tell you what it looks like. It looks to me like somebody's printed it on an inkjet printer with really crappy paper. That kind of texture, I guess. We're gonna apply some noise reduction, minor amounts of noise reduction, to get rid of that. And I'm gonna back it back down to 1:1 zoom, and you can still see that texture here, especially in the clouds in the back and on this guy's face back here. So we're going to use those as guides to try and smooth out the overall noise range, I guess. I'm not exactly sure what the technical term is, but we're going to get rid of it. And I'm not going to take it too far, because if you take it too far, you're actually losing something. And at this point, it looks like somebody's wet their finger and stuck it in a charcoal painting and has just smoothed it out that way. We don't want that. But I want it somewhere 25, 28, 30 maybe. Smooth out most of it. Leave a little bit of grain to let you know that it was taken with a camera. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and do the smoothing, or the sharpening as well. And I'm going to set our mask first. So we'll just grab a bunch of the edges and leave the main fill colors alone, just to give it a little poppiness. And I think with that, the only thing that's really left in my mind, well, there's two things that's left in my mind. The first is this wood treatment up here on this roof. Well, sorry about that, folks. That's a detail that I want to keep in, and I want it to stand out from the steam cloud behind it. This is a kind of an off-white paint applied to this wood, but I think I'm going to darken it up a little bit. I'm not going to change it from like white to green or anything like that, but I'm going to change the saturation level and the luminance level of this area. We're going to start with luminance, and I'm just going to pick that color and drag it down. Made it more of a cream color than I did anything else. But you'll notice that when I did that, it gets splotchy in here, and the reason it gets splotchy is because there's different pigments, and the cameras pick that up. Well, what I want to do is I want to try and get this to have a contrast, but not get this splotchiness. And again, at full size, or the full size of the image, you probably won't even see that splotchiness. But I'm zoomed in, so I can try and limit that as much as possible. So we're going to bring it up just a little bit, give it as much of a smooth tone through here as possible, and I may even tweak that little spot, bring it down a little bit to eliminate it. Alright, then I'm going to switch to saturation, and I'm going to pump it up. So I'm going to pick and I'm going to move up, just to give it, again, a different tone so it stands out from that white steam cloud in the background. And with that, I think I'm going to leave it. So it's more of a yellow, and it stands out from the cloud bank there. Now, the very last thing I'm going to do to it is I'm going to crop it, because there's so much going on over here. I just want to cut most of it out. We're going to do this. Come on, computer, catch up to me. My computer's actually been struggling the last couple of days. And I don't know why. Anyway, we're going to keep the top of the chimney in. And I've got this locked, aspect ratio locked. So as I drug it down toward the right or toward the left to get rid of the railroad cars, it obviously had to bring it down as well. So we're going to bring it somewhere in that range. So that, I think, is going to be my finished product. It brought the building and the train out from all the clutter on the right hand side. We pumped up the colors, and I don't think I went overboard on the saturation or anything there. And not being there to see what it actually looked like, I think that's as natural as it can. It looks natural to me, let's put it that way. So with that, I'm going to sign off and say once again thank you to the original photographer. Thank you to Greg and Jared for coming up with this idea, and keep them coming, folks. Until next time, see ya.